Well, welcome. Good evening, everyone. And thanks so much for tuning in tonight. This is Real Talk with ZSJ. I'm Sister Zakia, and I am your host. Tonight, as we all know, the inauguration took place a couple of days ago. And I have to say at the outset, it's been a lot for me and my family personally because we live here in the DC region. I don't live in DC proper. We actually live in Maryland, suburban DC. And it's the entire time, really, since January 6th, has been a lot for people who live in this region being occupied by the military and just getting alerts from your local elected officials about not going into DC and all of that kind of stuff. So it's definitely been kind of a challenging time. But anyway, tonight we're going to talk about the color of politics. And I have a wonderful guest here, Sister Tamara Sheely. I hope I said your name right. But please take a moment and introduce yourself to the audience. And I'm happy to have you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the invite. Thank you for having me. I think a brother's saying there's no sound. You might want to check your sound. I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah. Could you hear me though?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
But yeah, I am Tamara Johnson Sheely. I was a candidate for the United States Senate right here in the great state of Georgia. Ran in that special election to replace Kelly Loeffler, which was won by Raphael Warnock, but came in sixth place. So it's been an exciting year.
Tell me about that. You said you came in sixth place. Do y'all have like ranked choice voting or something down there?
No, so this was a special election to replace. So Kelly Loeffler was appointed by our governor. Right. Johnny Isakson, who was the sitting senator, became ill, and our governor appointed Kelly Loeffler to that seat until there was a special election. But special elections in Georgia aren't separate primaries. Everybody's on the ballot at the same time. So it's a free-for-all kind of election.
Oh, okay. All right. And so, tell us, if you will, a little bit about, that experience. We talking about the color of politics here. So, everybody from around the country, like, yay, Georgia, go Georgia, turn blue. Woo, woo. We get ready to look. Ain't no excuses for the Democrats now. They got the Senate, the House, and the presidency. Surely black people won. Ain't that right, Tamara?
No, we didn't.
Oh, okay.
We didn't win.
Tell me about that.
Girl, we did not win. We did not win. In this special election, there were 21 candidates. Democrats, Ooh. Republicans, Libertarian, Independent, Green Party. You had literally all kinds of candidates. There was a candidate on that ballot for everybody. Whatever your interest was, there was definitely a candidate for you. Kelly Loeffler, of course, Republican. Doug Collins, a Republican. He was a congressman out of Georgia who was running, Donald Trump's man. Raphael Warnock, he was the Democratic Party's pick. And this is where it gets, I get a lot of my frustration. I have lots of frustrations, but this one with the Democratic Party is that when you have other candidates in a race, and they're Democrats, it's such a slap in the face when the party and operatives inside of the party, they pick their candidate. They support their candidate. And to hell with the rest of us who are running as Democrats. And they picked Raphael. So it was not necessarily a real election. Raphael ran a whole campaign. Raphael Warnock ran a whole campaign. You got to understand, with no black agenda.
That's a problem. That's a problem. Black people have got to stop voting for people at this point in our history. Really, we should have been stopped voting for people who don't have an explicit black agenda. These Democrats have an explicit immigration agenda. They have an explicit LGBT agenda. They have an explicit women's rights agenda, which is coded as white women. Okay. But they can't have an explicit black agenda, and they can't win without black people. Can you tell me more?
Yeah. So it gets no black agenda, no plan for reparations. Not even saying the word unless he was asked or prodded, because he didn't, nothing specific to us. Because here in Georgia, This is truly the Bible Belt. This is the, where people, they see Reverend in front of, they saw Reverend in front of his name. They saw that D behind his name. They saw that black face. That was all we needed. That was all they needed. He didn't have to do anything more but show up, and literally garnered all the support, all the resources. So for me to come in sixth place, there were 5 candidates, of course, ahead of me. Raphael Warnock, Kelly Loeffler, Doug Collins, the millions and millions of dollars. There was another candidate who was a mayor. So she had mayoral connections around the state because they have the Georgia Mayoral Society, and they kind of know each other. So she had some extreme connections. She came in 4th place. 5th place was Matt Lieberman, whose father was Joe Lieberman out of, I believe, Connecticut, is where his dad was a senator.
Yeah, I remember him. He was just like Joe Biden. He was a pretty racist white supremacist as far as I could remember. But his son lived in Georgia.
His son lives in Georgia, and
Okay.
actually Matt's a pretty cool dude. Matt and I kind of really got along on the campaign trail, and even behind the scenes, we've had some great conversations. So I didn't have a problem with Matt Lieberman at all. But nevertheless, he came in 5th place, and I came in 6th place with 106,000 votes. And that
this was your first time out the gate?
No, this was actually my 4th run for office. I ran for the Georgia State Senate 3 times prior. Which that's a whole nother story, and why I have a bone to pick with the Democratic Party, because I see.
We can talk about it.
I see how they operate. So in this particular race, to get 106,000 votes, I was truly the first place grassroots candidate, because there was lots of candidates that got way less than I did. So for me to come that close to the top, I felt like we were very accomplished, and to run on a very bold Black agenda where I talked about reparations. It was at the top of my agenda. I talked about us having a federal agency. My goal was to create an agency, the Reparations Administration, where we would actually have an agency that would house our redress. I wanted us to create the definition of law. In law, who are these descendants of slavery? We have to have a legal definition. We don't have that. So those were the 2 things that were the biggest part of my agenda. I talked very boldly about it. It was, I didn't shy away from the conversation. And for Raphael Warnock to run a whole campaign and not have a Black agenda and not have a plan for reparations. To answer your question, did Black people win? No, we did not.
And so, you're talking about, for people who know me, who are watching, know I spent a lot of time in the state of Ohio. I've never run for office, although people have prodded me to run for office. I have been on the outside as a policy advocate, as an organizer, grassroots organizer, policy advocate. And I have worked to get bills passed at the state level in Ohio. And for people who understand, Ohio is considered a Republican state. It was a purple state or a blue state at one point back in the 90s and early 2000s. But the Democratic Party is ran by white supremacists also in the state of Ohio. And I can go, into great detail about my experience of actually dealing with them and dealing with that kind of situation in Ohio. But I will tell you from experience how that party particularly exploits Black people. And when it comes to issues that specifically impact us and our children, they won't move on them. And I'll share really quickly, Tamara, why I have a bone to pick. I've been voting Democrat since I have been able to vote. And my very first presidential election was actually Gore. I voted for Gore. I was a yellow dog Democrat because that's my family. Look, we Black, right? So a lot of both Black people are Democrats. And my aunt was very involved in politics, and she was actually appointed by Governor Dick Celeste back in the late 80s as the first Black woman to be a superintendent at the Ohio Department of Transportation, which is an all males boys club. And so that was, a big deal, back in the day. And she was on the front page of newspapers and all of that stuff, as a first. And so she was very connected with Black legislators back when they had a little power and had a little sense, I will say, and they actually did represent the communities that they came from. C.J. McLean, who is an ancestor now, shout out to him, who represented the Dayton area for many years in the Ohio legislature. And so I came up under that. So I was in the machine, if you will. I knew who the power players was in the Montgomery County, Ohio Democratic Party and on up to the state. And one of the things that I started to notice very quickly is that anybody that came in there young, if they were Black, if they were a woman, and if they had what we call, right now, progressive politics, if they actually wanted to represent the best interests, particularly of people in West Dayton, the people who were on the Democratic committee who you go in to screen in front of and all of that. I don't know if they have a similar process in Georgia, but they have a screening committee in Ohio. So the party decides who they're going to endorse and put their money behind and run. And they will continue to endorse and run basically Republicans. It will be white people, all from the suburbs, don't have no connection to our community or anything. And so I started just saying, okay, this isn't right. And then I just started, just having really reading and becoming more conscious. Certainly, listening to Malcolm and others, and his ballot versus the bullet speech really kind of sent me over the top. Like, okay, I need to reevaluate my whole idea about politics in relation to Black people. And I'm going to wrap this up really quickly because I feel like it ties in with what you're talking about. I actually went to my state representative in Ohio when my son, because I got into advocacy and education advocacy because of the school to prison pipeline, or the preschool to prison pipeline. As we all know, disproportionately impacts Black children, Black boys in particular in preschool. And my son was a victim of that. And I became an advocate, not just for him, but for all of our babies, across the entire state. I filed a complaint with the Ohio Department of Education, with the U.S. Department of Education. And honey, I took it everywhere and kept going. And so anyway, I started to realize I actually have to change state law, because Ohio had, and Georgia probably does too, had what's called a zero tolerance law on the books, where school districts felt like they just had to just continue to kick out kids for the littlest things, like, disruptive behavior, all this petty stuff, but they were only kicking out our kids. So I went to my state representative, who was a Black Democrat, and long story short, he wouldn't take up the issue because of the teachers unions. See, the teachers unions donate to Democrats, right? So this knowing how the whole sausage and everything and about who they get their money from, he basically did not take care of an issue that was impacting the masses of people in his district, children. We're talking about babies. But when I went to the Republican state senator, who was the education chairwoman, she took up the issue. People have heard me tell this story over and over again. After about 4 years, we got the law passed. But it was because we actually had to work with Republicans, because they controlled the state legislature in Ohio. And at the time, they controlled the governorship. We actually got a law passed that actually that was impactful for Black children with a Republican. And people hate when I tell that story, but I have to tell my truth, and that's what it is. And so, I'm finding that when I talk to people like you, Tamara, is that I'm noticing that it's not just in Ohio. I'm noticing that this is a Democratic Party kind of benign neglect policy. It's kind of hush hush that they do with us everywhere. But I brought you on because I have family, I have friends down there, and everybody like, oh, Zakia, you don't understand. These Republicans in the South, it's different than it is up north. It's different than it is on the East Coast and the Midwest. You just got to understand, these Republicans down here are different. So I don't know. I want to hear what's so different about the Democratic and Republican Party in the South versus the story I just told you in Ohio.
I don't think that I think that the Democrats are who they are. And I think I'm sometimes more afraid of them than I am the Republicans. I've worked with Republicans. I've done advocacy. I come from the beauty and barber industry, just to kind of give you a little backstory of where I came from and how I even got involved in politics. If you see this picture right here, right over my shoulder, I come from the beauty and barber industry. I owned a salon for 10 years. I did services for 18.
Oh, wow.
And I started watching my industry politically because something was happening when I saw stylists getting second jobs. I did nails, but I saw stylists getting second jobs and just the money just wasn't there. So I started paying attention. I started going to the board meetings, which led me to get involved with the national organization that addresses our industry, which took me to Capitol Hill. So I got a chance to advocate on and lobby on Capitol Hill. And I just started to realize that politics was not just in my industry. It's the air we breathe, the water we drink. It's everything. It's everything is political. The shoes on your feet, the car you drive, everything has some policy attached to it. So that's when I decided, I started watching my district. And that's when I decided to run for the state Senate. I was already advocating for my industry locally to Georgia and nationally. And I was like, okay, this legislator, Republican, staunch Republican, he was bad news. So I was like, okay, God put it in my spirit to run. And I ran in 2014, first time candidate, no name candidate, of course, no money, had a primary, won my primary, got to the general election against this staunch Republican and got 37%. And that said a lot for a no name candidate with no money because, this person.
Tell me about the district,
state.
Like, tell me about the demographics. Like, how did the Republican win against you? Was this a mixed district? Was it predominantly white? Was it predominantly black? Tell me a little about the demographics.
So this state Senate District 40 is for those of you that know Atlanta, it's north of Atlanta. It's DeKalb County, it's Gwinnett County, and it's a little bit of Fulton County. Predominantly white, predominantly affluent. So the demographics are not like the city of Atlanta. So this was a Republican district on the outskirts of Atlanta. This Republican had been in office for a very long time. I mean, a long time. Even Republicans couldn't get more than 20-some-odd% against him. So for me, a Democrat to get 37% out the gate was a big deal. So I knew I had to run again against this man. 2016 rolls around, did not have a primary, got to the general against him and got 43.8%. Now I gained some points. I was closer to beating this man, but I knew I had to run a third time. I knew I had to keep pounding away to take this district, right? 2018 rolls around, and that's when I saw who the Democratic Party was, going back on the heels of what you're talking about with the Democratic Party. That's when I saw who they were. A white woman gets in the race against me, but she was put in the race against me because, like I tell you, this district is predominantly white, predominantly affluent. They knew that if that white woman got in the race against me, that my brown skin was going to lose out. And I had a lot of white supporters that came to me and told me the truth, that the chatter was, they're not going to vote for me, a black woman, against this white woman in this white district. So she ended up beating me in the primary in 2018. This woman did not have an agenda specific to all. She just had to be, she was white and she showed up and she won. She rolled Stacey Abrams' coattail because Stacey Abrams ran for governor in 2018. She delivered the black vote. So this white woman didn't have to do anything but show up and have that D behind her name. And what did we do as black voters? We go to the polls and we see the D and we vote. They didn't know who this Sally Harrell was, this white woman. They didn't know.
Do they give out do they stand at the polls in Georgia and hand you the Democratic slate? Because that's what they do in Ohio. And black folks don't know thinking. All they do is the slate.
You know what? They get so much. We get so much mail and mailers and stuff. So just miles and miles of information is coming at us. So they know who the Democrats are, and it says D on the ballot. So behind that person's name, it'll tell you that person's a Democrat. So they just vote straight Democrat.
Right.
And like I say, Sally Harrell didn't have to do anything but show up. She had Stacey Abrams' black vote, and she won the seat to the Georgia State Senate in 2018 off of me doing 3 consecutive races to win. She won it. So God put it in my spirit to go back to school. Got back in school. I got my master's in law. So I now hold a Juris Master's in law from Emory. But he put it back in my spirit. Thank you. But he put it back in my spirit to run for the U.S. Senate. And that's when I got into this race. I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Even with all the losses, I have 4 losses behind me. But here's the kicker. This race to the United States Senate that Raphael just won has to be run again in 2 years, because this only concludes the last 2 years of Johnny Isaacson term, who was the senator that was killed.
Oh, I see. So Raphael Warnock, but what about the other Ossoff? He got to run
So
into
Ossoff, he had 6 years. His was a true U.S. Senate race. This was only to conclude the last 2 years of that senator's seat. So in 2022, Raphael Warnock has to run for the U.S. Senate again. So you know what we're doing right now. We collecting our receipts. Everything he does, we gonna know.
Wonder why they put the black man up to run for 2 years. Why didn't they put him in Ossoff's seat? How did they decide to do that?
Well, Jon Ossoff was already running. He had already committed to run prior, well before Raphael Warnock was appointed and anointed to run.
Okay. So tell me a little bit more about Georgia politics from your knowledge as a state, because I know that you're in the Atlanta region now, but you actually grew up in Southern Georgia, right? So you have some different experiences around the state. Is Georgia a blue state?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. It is probably purple, but all of let me tell you, so all of these House seats, these, state Senate seats, they're Republicans. They're the legislature is still dominated by Republicans here in Georgia.
Your state legislature is?
Yes.
I heard y'all had a big black caucus down there. Is that just in the House?
It's in the House. But we have over 100 and I want to say it's 170 House reps.
Wow.
So damn, you got to realize that we're going to have a large, the black areas will have black,
of course,
elected officials.
Okay, all right. And in terms of for the black community, right? From your perspective, how well do you think the representation is of the people who, I know you say the Republicans control the state. So I know y'all governor, everybody done seen him on TV and Trump went off on him. So we know y'all governor is a Republican, and we've been knowing that since 2018 because people say he stole the election from Stacey Abrams. By the way, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, this man remained in office. He was the Secretary of State,
right?
Which you're the one that counts the votes,
right? You
certify the votes. So for him to have remained in office as Secretary of State while he's running for governor, it whether he did something, it looked terrible. It looked terrible.
It looked a little unethical. Yeah,
absolutely, it did.
Yeah, and I think that's as for people on the outside looking in, that's what we hear, from people, around the country, what we heard about it. In terms of the material conditions of Black folks, I appreciate that your platform was about reparations front and center. What do you see in Georgia? Because I'll tell you, when I come down there, I was actually shocked that there was homeless people down there right by Martin Luther King's memorial, like right down there by Raphael Warnock's church, homeless folks. And I'm like, because on the outside looking in, y'all got all these TV shows about Atlanta. You think Atlanta is the Black Mecca. Like, okay, you go to Atlanta, everybody, all the Black people doing well. What's up with that? Because I know Democrats have controlled Atlanta for at least, 40 years or 50?
Mm-hmm. Don't let the smooth taste fool you, baby, because it is Atlanta, the homelessness, it truly is a public health crisis. Across the street from Raphael Warnock's church, there's homeless camps. There's people living, and I'm like, we have these mega churches, and we have this, where people could, we could feed them, we can house them, we can clothe them, we could help people, and the doors of the church are closed. Yeah, it's bad. It is bad. Atlanta is not what I came here, I moved here at 21 years old. And it works if you want to come here and make it work. I think Atlanta does offer a lot of opportunities, but you got to be very aggressive. And I was hungry for it. So I came here and I made it work for me. So I give Atlanta credit, Atlanta credit for that. but there's a lot of work that needs to be done around Atlanta politics. The mayor and the city council of Atlanta just gave themselves a raise.
Oh,
You know, in the
wow.
midst of a pandemic,
In the midst of a
this
pandemic, people
homelessness,
struggling.
people struggling, and they just gave themselves a raise very quietly, like it was nothing. Not not a little raise, a significant raise.
What did y'all, so I know some grassroots organizer. I'm familiar with Brother Kamal with the Community Movement Builders. And like I said, I have family down there. They actually live in the suburbs. Very close family live over in Cobb County. So every time I come to Atlanta, that's where I'm staying. And I know that Cobb is nicer and it's not necessarily, you know, Atlanta proper and things like that. But what does the landscape look like for grassroots organizations, and who's putting pressure on the Black elected officials in the city of Atlanta to meet the material needs of Black folks there?
Not enough of us. There's some, and you mentioned Kamal. There's some great activists and some organizers. We're all doing as much as we can. But we don't have, you got to understand, a lot of some of our Black elected officials, this is a whole different class of people. You know, they're not.
I'm in DC, girl. I know how it is.
They're not one of us. I don't know, you know what.
The Peacock Elite. I said the Peacock Elite, that book by Major Owens. He, you know, he used to be actually in the Congressional Black Caucus, but he wrote a whole book about, you know, just, you know, sometimes Black elected officials losing their way many times once they get elected and not actually representing the best interest of the people who put them there. Well, let's shift gears then a little bit, and I want to, you know, just talk about what Black people can and should expect. One of the things that I'm concerned with is I've had conversations with people since the election in November, and then of course since the Senate election that happened in early December. And there are Black people who will tell me that yes, they voted, and then in the same breath they'll be like, well, you know, we can't believe in politicians, we just have to pray and God's got it. And I get confused. Like I know Black folks, right? Like we believe in a higher power, and I'm all for that. More power to that. You know, I believe in the Creator as well. But I don't understand people. If you're gonna vote, you don't expect nothing in return, because all the other communities who are voting expect something, and it's almost like we don't understand leverage. Like Democrats, especially in Georgia, especially in a whole lot of places, they can't win without us. They cannot win without us. What's your assessment of that?
That faith without works is dead. That's what the word said. You know, we run to the polls and we give away this vote for free. For free. We give it away for free. And I think for some people, I think they like the look of voting, like they look smart. You know, I don't know. You know, it's emotional, the guilt and the shame. Somebody bled and died for you to vote. You know, all these emotions that we have with voting. When voting has to be a tool, you know, we got to learn how to weaponize this vote. And I started it after I did not win. Actually, after I did not win in 2018, on the heels of me going to law school, I started an initiative called Withhold the Vote. And Withhold the Vote does not say don't vote. I caught a butt whooping. They came for me for that one too, telling people not to vote. I never said don't vote. I said use your vote strategically. Everybody does not get to have withhold is a negotiating tactic. I'm a hold on to this until you give me what I want. I'm gonna withhold this. So we have to be mindful.
That's intelligence, by the way. That what you're talking about is actually intelligence, not just going to the vote polls on emotionalism and posting a picture of your sticker like you done did something, and then people in your community still not getting nothing, and people still homeless. I don't get it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't get it either. I can't. I can't. You know, people feel so. I think they just it's so emotional for us. I get it. I do get that part. How we still suffer from this trauma and this from slavery. Like it's something there that we're still dealing with as a people, that we can't think critically. It is. And I don't know what that is, but I recognize that it's there. But those of us that are woke, and those of us that understand that this vote, you don't get my vote. Like the same, I tell black people, we have two forms of power. It's the money in your pocket and that vote. You don't spend your money with everybody. I don't give my money to everybody. I'm not going to give you my money if you don't, treat me right or do me right. I can't give you my money. So why can't we take that same approach to voting? That is what withhold the vote is about, taking that same approach to voting and looking at the data. So what we do is what I've been doing now moving forward after Raphael, because he was the next person I said withhold the vote on. The first person was Sally Harrell. The second one was Raphael Warnock, and these are Democrats. I don't even have the bandwidth to fight Republicans. I got to fight y'all first. It's like I got to fight these Democrats first. So I said withhold the vote from Raphael. If Raphael doesn't give us a black agenda or a plan for reparations, withhold the vote. And I chant and I put that out the whole time he was running. Raphael won by a margin. He didn't win by some large number. Okay, he won by a small margin. He's vulnerable. And I'm hopeful that moving forward, like I said, we're going to track every piece of legislation. That's a bigger part of what we're doing with withhold the vote. We're looking at bills that are being introduced and organizing around these pieces of legislation. If this is some good legislation, HR 40 is a study. We can talk about that too. But we need to organize around these bills. Let these legislators know that not only are we watching you with the bills that you introduce, we're going to hold you accountable. And we're going to mobilize and organize. And when a legislator see withhold the vote, there's one thing that's, with the money with legislators, when that vote is threatened, they hear you very differently. So this is a weapon. This is an approach to politics in a way where we got to show black people how to use this vote strategically. It ain't for free.
It can't be for free. And I think that's what my frustration is. I'm going to be honest with you. I saw a lot of people because, a lot of money was poured into Georgia by white folks. That's where all the money comes from, white liberals. I saw that Zuckerberg poured a lot of money. Facebook poured a lot of money for the Democratic endorsed candidates. I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question. What do you think about black people who are being paid to serve us up with the vote without any kind of black agenda, without any kind of demand, but they get paid to GOTV? There's a lot of that in Georgia.
There's absolutely a lot of that, but we got to organize and fight back. Like they're going to continue to do that. I don't know how we, stop it, but I know that if we are able to counter it with our own message, and it's something that people can understand, like, okay, yeah, go out and vote, but don't strategically vote. Don't give that vote to everybody. You can skip somebody. You can write in a name. There's alternatives to voting for every person and everything on the ballot. And we don't know that there's alternatives.
Right. That's what I wanted to ask you. Did y'all have third-party candidates on y'all ballot in Georgia?
Well, in my race, there was all kinds of Green Party, Libertarian. There was all kinds of, yes, we did. And there's a space to even write in. I did not vote for Biden or Trump. I wrote in what I wanted to write in.
I live in Maryland, so Maryland was going to go for Biden anyway. It's a safe, as they say, state. So I definitely didn't vote for Biden. I wish I would, And I was clear about that. I've been like that. And now I got crucified. You talk about you got crucified. I got crucified in 2016 because I was I actually organized against Hillary Clinton in Ohio. Because, Ohio in 2016 was a major state. There was a lot of money poured in, kind of like Georgia. And I organized. I said, we ain't voting for her. And it solidified it when she brought Jay-Z to Cleveland to get the vote out. That's what they do. They bring in, instead of talking to us about policy and things that will improve our material conditions, they'll go out and get celebrities. And I seen that in this election. I seen all kinds of celebrities being pulled out in Atlanta and in Georgia. I saw that Kerry, all these people coming down to Georgia, to North Carolina, all the swing states. But do you see it? Does that happen to any? I'm not aware of it. Do any other subgroup of people or race of people have celebrities come out and tell them to vote? I don't see that.
Just black people and all the shucking and dry. all the shucking and jiving. I'm gonna tell you, every time I saw somebody at these GOTV events and they was dancing, it made my skin crawl. I'm like, y'all just gonna play some music, we gonna dance and shuck and jive, and we gonna vote. Feed, give us some food, have some food there for us. It's like, oh my gosh, yeah, they pulled out all the stops here in Georgia, and we fell for it.
But I'm gonna be sensitive with this next question because you introduced it a little bit at the beginning. You said it's the Bible Belt, and I'm not gonna pick on my people. Tons of people in my family believe, so I'm not doing that. But how do we organize with our people when there is just, especially with some of the religions, there's just a belief in faith, and there's not necessarily the strategic thinking part. You know what I mean? Like what you're talking about. Like, how do we? And I'm definitely not good at this because I know that other people on the other side, like when Kamala Harris came down there, did you hear how she changed her voice and was talking at that rally?
I can't hardly listen to her. Forgive me. I can't. Whatever she said, I didn't hear it.
What are you doing? I mean, she, got that, like she had to talk like she was in church or something. Girl. So I guess I'm trying to say, how do we organize that group of people? Like, you see what I'm saying? Because that's what they're doing. They get into that group of people with the specific kind of message and
I don't honestly, I'm gonna be honest. I do not think that there's a generation of us, and this is so respectful, that there's a generation of Black people that'll have to die out.
Ooh.
Because I don't know if we will be able to change that mindset. They have a different lived experience. They lived through the 60s. I was born in the early 70s. So they lived through the 60s. Okay. So they have a different lived experience, and they have a different relationship with the Democratic Party because they remember when these things happened and we got the Voting Rights Act, and they remember the King movement. They remember the dogs. They have a different lived experience. So we have to, that generation won't ever change the way they think because, and my generation, your generation, I believe we're the bridge. We're gonna have to raise up the next generation of us to get it right. And this is just time. This is, I said, it was 1865 to 1964 before we got the Voting Rights Act, right? Like there was almost 100 years in there. Mm-hmm. Right now, we're doing our work in those 100 years. We're just here to do our work.
Yeah.
In this season.
Yeah.
So I don't try to, because there's so many of them that you can't fight that mindset. I had an uncle that fought me back, went toe to toe with me about Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. How he knew, and he was right. Unfortunately, he was absolutely right. He said to me, the only person that's going to be able to beat Donald Trump is Joe Biden. And I didn't want to hear that then. I didn't want to hear it then because I didn't want to. I supported Marianne Williamson out the gate.
I did too.
Yeah, talking about reparations.
I did. I still did.
Bernie Sanders out of default because I knew I just couldn't support Joe Biden. So I'm like, okay, Bernie, you ain't talking about it, but are you closer than
anybody else on the stage? Yeah,
exactly. So my uncle kept saying, the only person that could beat Joe Biden, beat Donald Trump is Joe Biden. And
why do you say that? Is it because I find that Black people base their vote on what white folks gonna do? It ain't even about us.
But he was right. Let me tell you why. I'm gonna tell you why I think he was right. Because he beat Donald Trump, but he beat him because he was so Republican light that he was a safer choice than Bernie Sanders would have been. So Republicans were able to get on this Joe Biden train. And here's where I know Joe Biden is I'm scared that he's already sold us out and made deals with Republicans. Yeah. Because how do you go in with a $1.9 trillion plan that's already a freaking compromise? You promised Americans, Joe Biden, before Ossoff and Warnock won that Monday before that Tuesday, he promised us those $2,000 checks. We ain't stupid. He said them $2,000 checks was on the way. Now it's $1,400. How dare you subtract the $600 from the Trump administration from your promise? How dare you do that? And then so many people, you saw that thread.
I did. I saw it.
That thread was crazy.
I mean, you got other countries. These, I was done with you. I said, I can't do it. I'm gonna have a stroke. I couldn't believe the people defending him. Black folks, white folks. And then you had white folks had the nerve. Girl, I don't know how you let them white folks talk to you like that. They would. I've been to block them, but I know you're trying to run for office. Because it was white people, Asians, all kind of people were talking to you crazy. I was like, ooh, I mean, you're defending this status quo, like you said, Republican. Like, listen, everybody talking about Trump. I get it. Trump, in some ways, he really was just. I mean, the kids at the border, lots of things. You know what I'm saying? I get it. But at the same time, you had a 47 record of actual history of Joe Biden's anti-blackness. It was no choice. And so when you say withhold the vote, this was the best time, I believe, in recent history that Black people could have really leveraged and got something. But I'm gonna be real with you, sister. I blame the people who got all that money from them white liberals and said, oh, we'll deliver the vote. They should have negotiated when they was taking them checks from them white liberals to vote for Biden. This is what our community is going to need. This is a consensus. Reparations is a consensus at this point. It really is. I mean, of course, you got some outlier Black folks who ain't, because they just don't believe it happened. But it really is a consensus at this point. And other things, criminal justice reform, schools, like there were so many different things. There could have been, they should have gotten money, quite honestly, because they had time. They knew they were going to run against Trump. They had time to have focus groups with Black folks in all across this country, sister. We should have demanded that in the rural areas, in the South, in the Midwest. Do you know it's Black folks that live in Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington that don't nobody think about? We think Black folks ain't in certain places. They could have been focus groups with Black people all across this country. What are your needs, right? And I'm not talking about that thing that Alicia Garza did, because I can't even take time right now to get into some of the flaws of that. Because one of the things I will say that was a flaw of hers, that it did not focus enough on our economic deprivation, because that's really one of the biggest tools that I hear as a grassroots organizer. And I continue to have a national lens and a national network, is that economics, right? Which is tied up into race and anti-Blackness. And so for me, I'm with you with the withhold the vote. I have said clearly, right? Because everybody kept saying, well, this is not the time. We just got to get Trump out. That's the only thing. And I disagreed then. No, it's not just about Trump. And so to me, I don't know how you felt about that, but I felt like there should have been definitely a list of demands given to these white liberals who wanted us, because let's just be real, they're exploiting us for our vote. Now, where are all these groups that got out the vote? Where they at now? Where's all the food and rides and gift cards? Because people still need it. The vote is over now. It's like being a prostitute or being a woman who then got used by a man. Okay, we done having sex now. Well, what will you gonna call me back? You gonna take me out to eat? What, this is it? That's all you wanted? I hate to be vulgar like that, but that's what it feels like. And so, yeah, I mean, so I don't know, what's your assessment on that? I do feel like that we should have made some demands, a list of demands, a very healthy list of demands. And it could have been disaggregated for all the other subgroups: Black LGBT, Black immigrants, Black descendants of enslaved Africans. All of us, we should have been able to get something out of it. And now here we are, where Biden just did 17 executive orders. What was in there for Black folks? Did you see anything? I'm gonna ask my listeners, did y'all see anything in there specifically for Black folks? Now, of course, we're gonna benefit from some of the things, But I'm talking about what was targeted towards us. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Nothing. And he doesn't have to. I mean, you nailed it. It was like a one night stand. You got me. And you, like you say, you ain't gonna call me no more. You go, am I gonna see you
call me no more? You can't go out to eat.
It's the truth. It's the truth. And I hate that we can laugh about it, but it's the saddest truth. It is the saddest truth is what's happening to us. Like I said, we got to raise the next generation up. We got to raise the next generation up. They see us, these young people, they see our passion. They see our energy. They see us. They in the streets. They burning it down. You know, they mad. We're gonna have another generation that is gonna do it differently. And the good thing is that these black kids that we're raising up, this next generation of black voters, they got a lot of white friends. They got a lot of, so these children of these white liberals will definitely see things a little differently.
Interesting.
So I'm encouraged. I just have to be okay coming behind us, because this foolishness with this older generation, I there's nothing we can do with that.
Yeah. I mean, you said it, and I have to agree with you. I mean, I was kind of hoping it would be some, because I got a great aunt, she's a little older than baby boomer. She's born in 1939. So like you said, her lived experience, she almost put me out of her house for critiquing Obama. So, that's why they put Kamala on the ticket. You know what I mean? Because, it's just it's like we just get excited about seeing one of us in a high place, even if it don't mean nothing for the actual material conditions. The other thing is the class difference that I see. Like a lot of these people who promoted Biden, who was completely on his team, are pretty much middle class, some working class, but they were pretty much middle class, lots of academics, right? Pro Biden, pro the Democratic Party, lots of the class divide was pretty clear, at least to me. I don't know if that's your assessment in the South or what you saw in Georgia. Is there a class divide?
Oh yeah. Atlanta is its own, like you say, it is a mecca for some. They kind of that upper middle class. They have a lot of status. They have a lot of power, a lot of control. You travel. I traveled around the state on the campaign trail, even in the midst of the COVID. I knew I couldn't raise the money to compete, so I had to do what we grassroots organizers know how to do. We get on the ground, we get with the people. I put my mask on, put my gloves on, but I had to do it. So I traveled around the state in the month of August, and I stayed in the very rural areas because I knew those were voters and people that were totally going to get left out. So I'm country, y'all. I'm from Savannah, and I grew up in the city, but my roots are really from the outskirts of even Savannah. I'm really a country girl, so I was able to kind of get into these very rural areas. I made a lot of connections, and that's really kind of where my votes came from. They didn't really come from the metro areas, which hurt because the metro market during this campaign was so saturated. When I tell you they spent that money in television and radio. And when you go into these rural areas, I can tell you that they don't have access to the internet the way the metro area.
That's right. Yeah.
So their information is quite limited. So for me to come down there as a candidate, it people talking, they still talk amongst each other.
Yeah.
At their local radio stations, their local TV stations. So I had a chance to kind of get down, what we do, grassroots candidates, we get down with the people. Like I'm in here with the people. And that's how I was able to garner those 106,000 votes and be the sixth candidate in that race. Like I said, I may have come in sixth, but I was first place amongst the grassroots candidates out of 21 candidates. So I feel like we've
coming in sixth out of 21, girl, that's powerful.
I feel like now we sincerely have a foundation. For me to have run, like I said, a strong Black agenda, talking about reparations very boldly. We now have a foundation here in Georgia. Now, what we do with it afterwards, it really is up to the people. So Withhold the Vote right now is saying, we got to watch these legislators and we got to become very engaged in politics. So when 2022 rolls around.
Yeah, let's talk about that. What's the strategy for 2022?
I'm just waiting. No, I'm going to tell you, honestly, I'm waiting for God to say if this is what I'm supposed to do. So right now in the interim, I am just focused on educating voters. People cannot we will never win a race because we can't. First of all, we can't compete with like I say, $470 million was poured into the state. We can't ever compete with that. So guess what we're going to have to do? We're going to have to be doing what we know how to do as organizers. We got to get people engaged and motivated, and we got to get on the ground. So Withhold the Vote is just that. Let me teach you how to vote strategically. Let me talk to you about reparations and what that means and why that's important for our people. I actually did a PowerPoint presentation while I was on the campaign trail in one of these rural areas at a church, where I literally walked through what reparations is and why we need it. There's so much, we got to educate our people. I had a man older than us to ask me, Tamara, what is reparations? He had never even heard the word.
Oh.
So when I tell you there's a lot of education that needs to happen, we got to get on the ground. And if we don't do that, we will never win races. So where the work is right now and how we win and how we move forward and how we beat this, how we get what we actually are owed, because reparations is a debt owed. So how do we get this? We got to organize. We got to mobilize. We got to galvanize. We got to do just what you're doing with more people having broadcasts like this. We inviting each other I share my audience, you share your audience, and we gotta work together as grassroots organizers in order to fight this machine that's working against all of us.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And we have a pretty good set of listeners who are listening to us. Where can people find you? How can people find out more about the Withhold the Vote campaign? And then how can people support you? Are you accepting financial donations? How can people actually support what you're trying to do in Georgia? And that's the first question. Then I have another question.
So withholdthevote.org. So it's a whole website, y'all. It's withholdthevote.org. Go to the website. You can read about why we're even doing this. There's a page where we're going to start putting this bill specifically that we're working on. We'll have call to action, email updates coming. We're already doing meetings behind the scenes. But this is what it takes. This is organizing, and this is organizing in this digital space that we now live in. So it's withholdthevote.org. And you can find me. I'm on all social medias at Tamara Shealy. I do a broadcast Monday through Thursday on YouTube where I bring you bills. I actually track and monitor legislation for the beauty industry. So I track and monitor legislation for the beauty and barber industry. But for Withhold the Vote, I am looking at every bill that's coming through Congress. Every single bill will have my eye on it that's coming through Congress. So I bring to you Monday through Thursday all the bills that are being introduced. But it's one thing to have this information and we got to do something with it. So we got to get behind the scenes and do this organizing so that we can hold these elected officials accountable, so that we can really truly have a grassroots movement to weed out these politicians that ain't gonna ever do nothing for us.
And that's gonna be tough because some of them are gonna look like us that we gotta weed out.
Deuces.
Yeah.
Deuces, they can go. They can go.
Right.
They need to go. And we need to point them out. We need to point them out. Like they're owned by this, the liberals, the white liberals own them. So we gotta go and say, you know what? If you're not doing what you need to do for us, we taking that seat. We taking that seat. And that's what Withhold the Vote is. It's a direct threat. We are going to withhold this vote if you don't give us what we want, if you're not doing what you're supposed to do. We got to learn how to fight and not fight each other. So many of us, we're out here fighting each other and, we're fighting to survive, but we got to learn how to fight in order to move ourselves forward as a people. And this fight is in these political spaces.
I love that. I'm really curious. I'm also a country girl. For folks who don't know, I grew up in rural Alabama. I grew up right outside of Selma in a little small community called Beloit, Beloit. And I'm wondering, what were some of the top issues when you went and talked to our people in rural Georgia? What were some of the top issues that they shared that they really cared about, that they want somebody to listen to them and they want somebody to do something about? What were some of those issues?
Let me tell you, the top one was when somebody said to me, and I heard it over and over, what about jobs? What about jobs?
Yeah.
So here's where we got to start thinking different.
Economics, I know it.
This is where we got to start thinking. So my answer to them was, your jobs are gone. Let me break the news to you. Your jobs, they're gone. They're gone overseas, or they've been automated. They're gone. and they're not coming back. All right. So here's what I wanted people in rural Georgia to see that they really still don't understand. What you have that the people in the metro area don't have is land. You richer than us. You richer than the people that live in the metro area because you have land. Your number one and most valuable resource. You could be feeding the rest of us. There's so much you can do with your land. And we got to start, have opening up. Like I said, I got aunts that know how to bake. Somebody know how to sew. We got to be our own economy. Let's go back when we was free from slavery. We created Black Wall Street. We didn't need them. We everything we needed, we produced it. We did it ourselves. And that is where we are in this COVID season. God has hit the reset button. This is our opportunity because your jobs are gone. And if you got a job, you got to work 2 and 3 of them just to make ends meet. It's over. So he said it, land is gold. Exactly. We now got to recreate ourselves and start sharing the wealth amongst each other. That is how we're going to win in this new information age. This is how we're going to win.
You said a word when you said that reset. I have actually been talking about that on this channel. I actually interviewed Allison Havel out of Philadelphia. And, you said God has set a reset, and that's true. But also, the global financiers have done what's called a global reset with the economy. And you said it, you was like, this is a new technological age. We're actually living through what is now known as the fourth industrial revolution. And one of the things, and I would love to, if you have any thoughts on, love to get your thoughts on it. But one of the things that I saw over this past weekend, Saturday, Biden had a press conference. This was the first time a president-elect had so many press conferences. I have never seen a president-elect talk so much. But anyway, that's a sidebar. But he was always having press conferences. I'm like, damn, you ain't the president yet. But anyway, he appointed a geneticist to a cabinet level position, a geneticist. In fact, I probably need to just pull up this article. Just give me a minute. This man had been a part of mapping the Human Genome Project. Had you heard of that? At least the Human Genome Project. See, a lot of people haven't heard of all this stuff. So that's why you see they're conditioning people. Believe in the science. My last week's guest was an expert on eugenics and how eugenics, the science, has been used to against Black people, right? Has been used, population control, all kinds of different things. In fact, I'm actually reading a book now, a book series, The Choice. This book is out of print by an African-American author, and I'm still reading that book. I'll probably do another reading tomorrow. I'm at part 3 right now. But all of these things are tied in. This book was written in 1971, 50 years ago, and we're still talking about the same things. But he appointed a geneticist to a cabinet level position. I'm making a connection because we're seeing technology improve, if that's what people want to say. But we're seeing the advancement, I will say, of technology, and it's getting to the point where they're merging it with humanity. They're merging it with humans, and there is going to be a field. There is a field called transhumanism. It's not in the popular lexicon yet. But these are the things that are happening now. And one of the things that I hate about mainstream media is that they're not talking about it. The World Economic Forum is talking about it. In fact, they're meeting next weekend, January 24th through the 29th, I believe, the Davos. These are all the billionaires of the world who comes together, and governments that all come together, and they decide on how the global economy is going to move. So that is another thing that we're not talking about within our community. And I love the fact that you were talking to our people about their land, because we saw that Bill Gates is now the, right? So Black folks who are in rural areas, we definitely need to be having conversations with them, because they may be a target for some people trying to come and take their land. I say that because my family, where I grew up, still own 100 acres in Alabama. And up until now, we haven't had any problems with eminent domain and things like that. but I can foresee that eventually, being an issue as these global technocrats, just try to do world colonization all the way over again. But this time, the colonization is going to be down to the actual cellular level, and I mean like cells inside of our body. Are you familiar with Elon Musk?
I know the name, and I know who he is, but I don't see. This is why this new black media that
The
we
new
have
black media. Yep.
is so important. Your platform is so important. It's because this is where everybody has a lane, and if this is your thing, I'm gonna be listening to you for this because I don't know. What I do is I follow policy.
Yep.
And
But you're doing it right.
Bills. That's
You're getting ready to start seeing it in policy though, and and they're going to come to you, and it's going to sound like, oh, this is so innovative. They're going to say it's innovation. They're going to make it sound very good. They're going to say this is good for the economy. Think about the jobs. They're going to use that word. But the problem is that we have to know our history. See, history is contemporary, and anytime you have people who have a history of using science, right? We know about everything that happened with Tuskegee. However, it just wasn't just Tuskegee, as Sister Harriet Washington told us in Medical Apartheid. If people have not read that book, I have been encouraging people to read that book for the last year. Ever since COVID has been an issue, like just telling people, like, listen, man, don't just believe everything you hear in mainstream media. You need to verify. You need to read. That's why I'm actually reading for people. I said, you know what? This book is $700 on Amazon. This is not going to be an issue. I have got to get this information out to my people. That's why I'm actually reading it like an audio book on my YouTube page. I do like 2 hours a day or a session when I do it. I read like for 2 hours, just reading to my people so they can have this information, because I know none of us can afford to pay Amazon $700 because the book is out of print. And he's an ancestor now, Samuel Yet, who is actually a wonderful figure in history. A lot of people don't know him, have never heard of this book, but he was the very first Washington, D.C. Correspondent for Newsweek magazine. And Nixon, the president, actually had him fired from Newsweek because of this book. That's how deep the book is, and I'm making the connections of what he was talking about. His main thesis, really quickly, is that Black people are no longer needed for the economy in the United States. We're obsolete. He actually uses that word, obsolete, and it says the issue of Black survival in America. And the reason why I'm reading this book is because this right now, with this merging of technology, CRISPR technology, and all of this stuff. I'm not trying to scare people. I want people to read and start checking out these things for themselves. And when you mentioned about the farmers, I said that's it. Like, we need to make sure that we're growing our own food, because the food is going to be impacted by this technology. We need to make sure that we are actually moving back, really honestly, in rural areas, because cities are going to become what's called smart cities. People can argue now that privacy doesn't really exist, but once we get into these smart cities, everything is going to be tracked and surveilled. Everything. And it's already happening in policy. I had a friend of mine who was on my show that I do during the daytime with my day job, and she and her organizers in Twin Cities and Minneapolis, they organized to actually stop what's called a joint powers agreement, where they were actually going to be using all of this data to do what's called predictive analytics. See, it's like a Black Mirror episode, if you ever watched that on Netflix, but it's getting real like sci-fi, and people, I'm telling you, Biden is 100% on that train. So when no one better than when he promoted a geneticist to a cabinet level position and Black folks ain't got no questions, I said, we in for it. We in for it. People are not ready. But I talk about it with Allison on this podcast on episode 5. It's almost 3 hours long, but she does a whole presentation breaking it down, following the money, who is behind it. Most people talk about Trump, but people need to be afraid of a person named Klaus Schwab, who is the chairman of the World Economic Forum, who is setting off the global reset on the economy that will be much more technologically driven. So like I said, I'm not necessarily an expert on it, but I bring on people like you, people who have knowledge and expertise about certain things to actually talk about these things because I love my people and I don't want to see us become cyborgs.
Yeah. And
You know?
what does that mean? Does that mean that our bodies will be controlled by technology? Does that mean that
Yes,
instead of me
basically.
going to the doctor, y'all gonna hook me up to a machine to fix me? What does that mean?
So there's actually a definition. I'm actually going to pull it up for you. And Elon Musk has actually talked about it already. He said, "Well, you're already basically a cyborg." Elon Musk has already said that. He said, "Oh, you basically already a cyborg." So I'm gonna pull it up and then I'm gonna share my screen. But basically, it's where you merge technology with humanity. That's exactly what it means. And I'm pulling it up. Hold on, because I want to share this so everybody can see. Let me share my screen. Just a second. But that's exactly like what you just said. That's exactly what it is. Yep, here it is. All right, can y'all see that? Can you see it?
Yes.
So it says a person whose physiological functioning is aided by or dependent upon a mechanical electronic device. Now, so that's, technology. So that's why you hear about something called machine learning. So actually social media is that algorithms. Like I'm telling you, I have been on a deep dive, like trying to brush up on all these new terms and things like that. One of the things that the reason why I asked you if you know Elon Musk is because he's actually building and did a presentation in September on hold on, let me see. He actually did Elon Musk. Uh, hold on. Yeah, he is building so he owns Tesla, which is a technology company, but he's also building a brain implant called Neuralink. And he did a presentation back in September. And I remember I was dumbfounded. I actually watched it because I was like, what the hell? He said, yeah, you can just plant a device in your brain and it can heal things, which okay, that's fine. But I don't know that I want technology planted in my brain. And one of the things that he said, here's the demo where they actually showed it. Of course, they do everything in animals first, but they did it in this pig and show like the pig looked fine and all of that kind of stuff. It was about an hour long, but it's like a Fitbit inside of your brain. They actually implant it. Now that's what I mean by these people are going to actually control you down to your cellular level. Now once you implant something like that, right, what kind of assurances do you have that whoever is controlling the machine wherever, what kind of assurances do you have that they're not going to do things in your mind or your brain that would, I don't know. I don't feel comfortable with it. Something having something implanted in my brain. Now they're selling it to people by saying, it will cure dementia. You can see that they cure dementia and Parkinson's. But one of the other things, because this is not telling you the whole thing, it's actually on YouTube. You can go and watch it. One of the things that he said that actually blew my mind, he said, yeah, even when people die, the Neuralink will still have your consciousness and your consciousness will still be alive. And to me, I feel like that's playing God. You know what I'm saying? Like that's like next level. So that's what I mean by the fourth industrial revolution. That's exactly what the fourth industrial revolution is merging technology, transhumanism, nanotechnology, all of those things. And I'm, like I said, I'm by no means an expert or anything like that, but I can tell you that these are things that are happening behind the scenes. And how I know that is because I study financial markets because as an investor, people who invest, you have to study financial markets. You have to study, what are the upcoming, companies and, what's happening to transform, the world economy and things like that. And that's actually how I learned about all of these different things. So, I know that was technically what we were talking about on the show, but it kind of sent me down that road because I'm like, we kind of need to be talking about some of this stuff, about, especially with the economy and all the stuff that's happening with this. And so that's why I'm concerned, because I don't hear even Black economists who I respect, they're not talking about it, but it's very real. The fourth industrial revolution and how the economy is actually changing. So anyway, I know I see there's a lot of comments like, yeah, RoboCop, all kind of robotic, machines or cops who actually started using robots. AI will take over teaching. Like, we're going to see a huge shift. The other thing is autonomous cars. Tesla, Elon Musk, his car, they have just gotten approval in the state of California to do autonomous driving. So you're going to see cars driving themselves in smart cities. This is all going to happen on their timeline by 2030, where you'll see, can you imagine like looking and there's just a car down the street driving by itself? Ain't nobody driving, it's just driving it. They said by 2030, that's what smart cities will look like. You'll have autonomous driving cars. Google, the owner of this platform, has a car called Waymo. But like you said, most people have not heard of any of this stuff. They've not heard of it. No. Because nobody's talking about it in the mainstream media, but it's happening.
So here's where I want to know, like, we as a people, this is where we have to be, have these conversations about what are we going to do? Like that book that is saying that we're going to be obsolete. The Democratic Party is not going to need us in a little while. Joe Biden made it real.
They're not. 11 million. They're already pivoting to Latinos.
Yeah, the 11 million that he's about to, grant immigration rights to. There it is. That 11 million, that's going to totally dilute whatever value it is that we had left. So when you just said a few minutes ago that this was our best time with this Trump administration and this Biden race, this was the most strategic time for us to have had some leverage. Yep. And we dropped the damn ball. We dropped the ball. So now we're here. What do we do as a people? I'm always about solutions. I'm always looking at what we do. Like I said, I go back to the, being in rural Georgia, and I told them, y'all got land. You got land. That means you could feed yourself. This reparations that come, I want land. This dollar ain't gonna be worth much. Give me my land. Let me get a tractor instead of the mule. Give me a tractor.
Come on.
So I can feed myself, and I can always have a place to live.
Yep, that's it. And so I told you at the beginning of this call, when we were backstage, when you and I were talking, I said, well, that's actually one of the things that my family and my husband and I were actually talking about, moving back to the South, either Georgia. And that's, like I said, I still have family in Alabama. We still have 100 acres of land that we could just go. My cousin talking about come and put a trailer. I'm like, boy, I ain't living in no daggone trailer. My cousin, yeah, y'all can just put a trailer right there.
Girl, you better consider it. I'm telling you.
That's what my husband said.
Girl, I'm gonna tell you, the trailers now, some of them look really good on the inside. Now you got to remember, the material that they made of, it ain't the best.
It ain't. That's what I'm saying. A good tornado come through.
Tornado, you're gonna wipe you out, but
we finished. But I do. So in terms of solutions, because this thing is ever evolving, and we see that certainly the Democratic Party is really the party of the elite at this point, in my opinion. They really are, because they're completely in bed with Silicon Valley. They're completely in bed with a lot of these people who are pushing these things, like I'm talking about the World Economic Forum and Davos and all of those people and things like that. Black people need to do what you was just saying, as far as, and I know what some of us don't want to do this, and I'm one of them, right? Because I grew up on a farm. I can't even imagine having to like go back to that type of life, but it may be what we have to do to save our children's lives and our lives from being merged with technology. One of the things I can say that go ahead.
You know what? I think that once you get beyond the fact that, but it's a peaceful life. It's a simple life.
Right.
It's all of the burdens and the stresses that you have trying to make it in this bigger world. I think once you do it, like I'm trying to push you to go back. So once you come back down here to the South, I think you'll be like, I should have did this a long time ago.
every one of my cousins, because you know that we having a great migration back south again now, and a lot of my cousins who moved like from Detroit and stuff, they're actually in Alabama now. And they told us the same thing, like, man, y'all should have been back down here. You know, so lots of Black people are leaving the East Coast, these Washington, D.C., because guess what? We're being pushed out anyway. You can't even afford to buy a house. And I'm telling you, this area where I live, you be house poor because the houses, and I ain't talking about no big fabulous house. Girl, I'm talking about a regular size little single family home, $1.5 million. And it don't make no sense.
Let them have it. You got
Let them
100.
have it.
You got 100 acres. You could be eating fresh fruit and vegetables every day, and you know, let them have it. Let them have
Right,
it.
right, right. Exactly. So, you know, it is something to consider. I see there's people in the comments was like, you know, I actually made a post on my post. You friends with me on Facebook. I said, I actually want to like repatriate. I actually want to move you know, to the continent, you know, and because I have friends who've done that as well. In fact, you know, one of our close friends is actually over there now. She married a man from Ghana. And so, but my family's not fully on board with it yet because that's, you know, that is a big decision. What I was proposing to my family is dual citizenship, and I know for a fact that Ghana does offer dual citizenship as their apology for their involvement in the transatlantic enslavement of our people. And so I've been thinking about that as well because, and the reason why I say that is because and I don't know if you know this, I'm actually going to pull this up, but Africa actually has 8 of the fastest growing economies right now. So I'm talking about like all this technology and stuff and like all of this stuff, but Africa also has the youngest population. So that's why you got people like Bill Gates and others who are very interested in controlling the reproduction of African women over there. But they have the youngest population. They also have the 8 fastest economies growing, the 8 fastest growing economies right now in the world. And so that was the other thing that I've been talking to my family about. But as you know, I think that you know, when you born here and all of our family, you know, has been here for generations and stuff. Now that's a hard decision to make, but I feel myself getting like Randall Robinson. I'm not sure if you was familiar with his work, but he founded an organization called Trans Africa and did a lot of work, grassroots work. And he actually did a lot of work on reparations. That's why I was, you know, wondering had you heard of him, but he actually left. He moved. He don't live in the United States anymore. And as you know, W.E.B. Du Bois, and there's others like who were born here, lived here, and was just like, I'm done. I can't advocate no more. I'm just done. You know, so I feel myself getting there. Like I still love like my family and stuff, but like this connection to this empire, I'm gonna be honest with you, sister. I don't feel it no more. I just don't. You know, I know that I'm American as far as like my ethnicity, but I think that there is beauty and life in other places, and that a part of our conditioning, as we always hear on the news, Joe Biden said it, Trump said, all of them, America is the greatest. It's all this and it's all that. And I'm just like, okay, but y'all still killing us, right? Ain't nobody going to jail when they kill us. You understand me? You got sons, right? You know, I got children, man. And I don't know. I know that kind of took a left turn, but I'm just saying that's what I've been personally thinking about, because I saw some people in the comments was like, y'all talking about going back to the South? I'm going to Africa. So I don't know, but we'll probably do the South on our way out, because like I said, my family is not fully on board, and I ain't going nowhere without my husband. I'm not going nowhere without him. You know, we joined at the hip. So, and we need each other. I was gonna say I need him, and so we need each other. So, well, I want to provide an opportunity for us to kind of wrap up this conversation. We've had a very, very, very engaged audience. Like, I mean, it's all been positive, very, very engaged audience. So just want us to provide an opportunity for us to kind of wrap up, you know, maybe some of our comments. I know we talked a lot about, you know, some next steps for 2022. I don't know if we want to start thinking about like what we need to be doing in 2024, but I do know that 2022 should be a focus in terms of at least us having some kind of the demands from a real grassroots level to demand on the Democratic Party and whoever is running. Quite honestly, I'm gonna be honest with you. I think black people. I think we make a mistake by not engaging Republicans at all. Trump was in office for 4 years, and black people felt like we weren't supposed to engage him.
Well, I made it.
Now, in my mind, that don't make no sense.
It doesn't make any sense. I made it quite clear if I had gotten elected, I was going to reach across the aisle. I'm going to have Republican friends, and I would have went to Donald Trump. I wasn't afraid to go knock on that door too. I mean, this is about politics. It's about getting what we need at the end of the day. There it is. I absolutely believe that we have to engage with both parties, period.
I agree. And Q caught so much slack, but it's almost like it's like we treat politics like a game, like a sport. And it ain't like that. These people are making policies and practices. Trump is president. He was president. He's making policy, whether you like it or not. You need to get something on the list for your people. And the reason why I say that is because I did that in Ohio. I did it. I had to. My black Democratic representative would not represent me. He wouldn't even introduce the bill. So what you expect me to do?
Yeah, I've actually worked with them. We introduced policy. The beauty and barber industry did, and I've gotten some of my best advice from Republicans.
Yep,
they people too. They just have a different ideology. The thing is, the Democratic Party wants to continue to give us social programs. I owned a business. I was a small business owner. Like I said, I had a small nail salon, and I want to do business too. So I want to hear what these Republicans got to say. I want to know what they're doing and how they're doing it. So I believe in reaching across the aisle. I don't play politics like that.
Me either. So I don't know. And I'm talking about for real policy. Somebody mentioned Diamond and Silk. I'm not talking about buck dancing because there's plenty of buck dancers on the left too. I mean, do I need to name them? Somebody said Roland Martin earlier. I mean, come on. People love to pick on the few black buffoons on the right, but you got a whole list of them on the left. I mean, that do it for Democrats. They buck dancing and doing all that stuff too. And our community's not benefiting. I'm talking about actually benefiting our community. As Sister Tamara says, she worked with them and has gotten advice. I actually got a state law passed working with that benefited our children. The state law was a ban on pre-K through third grade suspensions and expulsions for children in all of Ohio public and charter schools, because our children were the biggest demographic of making up the school to prison pipeline. I got that done through a Republican legislature, and a Republican governor signed it into law. I use the fact that the Republicans have passed a third grade reading law as leverage, because if you're going to say third graders have to read by third grade, and you looking at all of the data, we got black babies getting kicked out of school when they're 3 years old. How you gonna punish them when they in third grade and can't read because they getting kicked out when they in preschool? We can't have that. And so the Republicans agreed, but I couldn't get the Democrats to do it because the teachers union, which is mainly white females, let's talk about it, mainly white women, did not support the bill because guess what? They want to kick out the little black baby. They don't want to teach them in the first place. It's a lot. So anyway, and that's the other thing. We need to be starting our own schools. And we can have a whole separate show about that. But anyway, sister, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for all of your hard work. I appreciate the fact that you are continuing to do the work. I appreciate the fact that you actually teach the community on your own YouTube channel and follow legislation. We got all of these civil rights groups, and they won't do none of that for us. Like the Latino civil rights groups and all these other groups, they actually have actual lobbyists lobbying for their concerns. And here you are as a grassroots activist, you're doing it on your own to notify the community about all of these different policies that may impact them. So I just want to appreciate you. Thank you for coming on to the podcast. I definitely want to have you back on. You always, have a seat at this table if you want to come and talk about some things. that's popping off, or like you need some support, you need to drum up some grassroots support. Anytime, like if you're running again in 2022, we need to have you back on so we can talk about that. But I want to give you the last word, to, let people know where to find you, how they can follow you, and also how they can support you.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to say thank you for doing what you do, sis, because it will take all of us to do what we do the way we know how to do it in order to elevate our people. So I just want to, thank you, and, just thank you for doing what you do, sis, because we need each other. And I'm gonna come back to you. Now that you've given me some nanotechnology and some buzzwords to look for.
Ooh,
When I
yeah.
see this in policy, I'm gonna get behind the scenes and I'm gonna talk to you. And maybe this is something we can bring back to your audience as some information specifically about what's coming down the pipe.
Oh, it's coming.
It's coming. And now that you've given me, and if you don't mind, if there's any words that I need to look for, I can query
Oh,
these
yeah.
and
Oh,
really make
yeah.
sure that I'm targeting them, so I will know what to look for. So if you would put that in a thread so that I can bring that back to your audience. So when these bills are coming down, maybe this is something that I can organize with you, and we can kind of get get people engaged to fight some of this stuff, because we got
Well,
to
yeah,
fight.
we really need to watch the federal level now, because see, the Democrats have the House, Senate, and the presidency. So I expect a lot of these things to kind of like just slip through, because we can't trust none of our civil rights organizations to do anything about it or even let us know that it's coming. But one of the things that I will say, I want to encourage everybody that's listening right now, go back on this channel and listen to episode 5. We give you a deep dive into everything that is coming. I only gave you a snippet. And Allison Havard McDowell, who was my guest, she is a white woman, but she is an expert on researching following the money on the World Economic Forum, and how also the UN, right? The United Nations sustainability goals are completely connected to all of this. In fact, she came back on my episode 7 and did a deep dive on the UN's part in this. This is how people, because it's global. It's not just the United States. It's global. They're doing nanotechnology, biotechnology. All of this stuff is happening, and a lot of it is really popping up in China as well too. So everybody really needs to go back and listen to episode 5 and episode 7 on this channel. Allow yourself time to do it, because the first one is about 3 hours long, and I think the second one is a little over 2 hours long. But it's information if you want to know about everything about all of this fourth industrial revolution and how this global reset is happening economically, globally. That information is there, and I encourage everybody, and you too, sister. And you always have access to me. Like if you got a question, or if we want to organize a call with me, you and Allison. That's a good thing about Allison. She'll talk to anybody, especially somebody that like you that's running for office. She wants to get to people who are going to be in these policy seats and policy positions, and educate them about like what to look for, what the buzzwords are. Innovation is going to be one of them. You're going to hear that a lot. Innovation. I forget it. There's another word. But anyway, once you watch episode 5, if you want to call me, we can talk about it. And I'll get Allison on the phone too. Because like I said, anytime I talk to Allison, Lord have mercy, we'd be on the phone for like 2 hours. Because when the very first time I talked to her, my mouth was just open the whole time. Like, what? And nobody's talking about it. Literally. Nobody is talking about it. Like, except for like grassroots. And I'm going to be honest with you. Ain't nobody talking about it but white people. They own it. And that's why I had her on my show.
And here's something as we close out too. Some of those Trump supporters, they've on it too. So they knew stuff and they know stuff, and people thought they were crazy, but they know stuff. And
I didn't find out.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, sister. Thank everybody for listening. Make sure y'all come back. Follow this channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share. Take care, everybody. Peace and blessings.